Good evening, everyone. We wanted to update you that we plan to start our national town hall shortly after President Biden concludes his remarks tonight. He's just started his remarks from the Oval Office, and so we will start our event shortly after he concludes those remarks. You can call back then or stay on the line. The choice is yours. Thank you.
everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the NAACP National Town Hall. My name is Abba Blankson. I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer for the NAACP. Listen, we have all seen the news this week. We just saw the address from the Oval Office. The political landscape has shifted, but our mission remains unchanged. We are all in, and we are excited to have a great panel with us today of congressional leaders, political strategists, organizers who will provide us the information needed to mobilize and engage our communities across the country. And we're excited to have journalist and host Ed Gordon with us to facilitate the conversation. This is a space for you, our audience. We encourage you to participate actively. If you have a question, dial *3 to join the question queue if you're with us on the phone, and leave us a comment if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook. As you listen to the speakers today, if you feel inspired to volunteer, which we will need all of you to do, and help us in this crucial work, please visit naacp.org/volunteer. And you can also chip in financially to support the work. $5, $10, $20, any amount. Visit naacp.org/donate to contribute. Nothing is too small. So let's get to work. Without further ado, I want to introduce NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson. President Johnson.
Thank you, Abba. And I want to thank everyone who's joining us. The goal of this Teletown Hall is to provide an understanding or educate everyone about the state of things as we look at the current landscape. As you all are aware, we all heard the news on Sunday. The president decided not to run for re-election, but to complete his term as president. And as a result of that, he endorsed the Vice President, Kamala Harris, as she pursues the election of the presidency of the United States. But it's not as simple as he endorsed and then she has a coronation. There's still a process that must go through. And the goal of this Teletown Hall is to educate and enlighten everyone about the process. NAACP, we're nonpartisan. We're not endorsing a candidate, nor are we endorsing a political party, but we are very political. And from that political voice, we want to make sure that African Americans understand how to navigate the progress, particularly those who will be serving as delegates during the Democratic National Convention. We have members and board members who are actively engaged with both political parties, and some are actually engaged with the Green Party. And so if we ran into this juncture of any of those vehicles for voice, we would be doing the same thing. But now we are looking at the Democratic Convention, and we are proud to have partners and friends who can help us understand the importance of this process as we look at the importance of November. In November, we will have a choice, not particularly candidate A or candidate B. The choice will be whether or not we will have a functioning democracy or something less than that. And that's really important for African Americans to understand the power that we hold, the power that we have, the power we must leverage to ensure the future that we would like to see for our children and our children's children will be intact. That our quality of life will be impacted by our vote, because it's through our vote that we were able to navigate the last 4 years to increase the number of homeowners from our community, to reduce the student debt loan obligation, and to reduce the cost of insulin, where so many individuals are suffering with type 2 diabetes. Those are all policy choices that your vote made the difference. And so with that said, we're going to need you to volunteer to turn out to vote in November, to turn out your neighbor. We have a lot of individuals in our communities who are infrequent voters. And let me correct one thing. The Black community vote on par with the white community, but we have to overperform. Why do I say that? Because our future is at stake. We have risen to the occasion on multiple times to save this democracy, and we must do so again. Not because it's going to help someone else, but it's going to help you in your household, your community, our community, and this nation. So with that said, as you are educated through this Teletown Hall meeting, I want you to also take out your cell phones. and text the number 20707 and the word volunteer so that we can provide you with the information as it relates to your local elections and the individuals who are infrequent voters in your community, some of which may actually live in your household, so you can turn out to vote and our voices can be heard and we can impact this democracy to represent the best interests of our community. With that, I want to thank you all, and I'm going to sit back along with you and be educated about this process.
All right, Derek, thank you very much. Greatly appreciated. I'm Ed Gordon and proud to host and moderate this evening. We've got a lot of moving parts for you. We want to get as many guests as we can. And of course, we'll hear from you. Our first guest is Senator Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey. Senator, always good to talk to you. I want to ask you, with all that has happened in the course of the last few days, I know that you've been beating the drum of saving democracy. Sometimes when we get in news cycles, these things can be cliche. With what you heard from the president this evening and what you know is ahead, is it fair to say that that is not cliche, that that is an actuality in your mind?
Well, we've seen an erosion of really key aspects of our democracy. We've seen an erosion of voting rights with the gutting of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by the Supreme Court. We have seen more and more laws being passed on in more states with voter IDs and the like. And then we saw a presidential election with the first time in history, even though the sitting president, Donald Trump's top election officer, said it was a fair and valid election. You had many people calling into question and literally having the Capitol of the United States of America stormed. I was talking to police officers today who remember that violent and vicious day. I was talking with members of the media who remembered what it was like having people come to the Capitol with the intention of overruling the will of the people and the certification of an election. So we know these issues are at stake, and we know that there are things we can do to better secure and ensure our democracy. But at the end of the day, it's not talking about it. It's not even believing it. It is about voting about it and making sure that we vote the change we want to see in the world.
Senator, very quickly, as I know you have a heart out with us, tell those who are still skeptical, who still believe that perhaps their vote won't make a difference in the day-to-day, it won't change politics as we know it today. What do you tell them?
Well, I know this. The black vote has been the deciding vote in Senate elections and House elections and even presidential elections. It really is a turnout issue. We looked at the numbers after the 2016 election. And if the cities of Philadelphia, for example, Milwaukee and Detroit all had the similar turnouts that they had in 4 years earlier in the last term of Barack Obama, it would have just changed the outcome of the election. Hillary Clinton would have won with ease, just with those three cities alone having a higher level of turnout. There's an old saying, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference and it's inaction. And this is a time where we have to resolve, especially the African American community, who's been the conscience of this country, who in many ways has called this nation on labor rights, on civil rights. Some of the greatest women's rights activists have been African American leaders and a population that has been willing to demonstrate for it. I leave you, Ed, with the incredible words of Langston Hughes, who said, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, but I swear this oath, it will be. And so I want you to know how grateful I am to the NAACP. If there was no NAACP, there would be no me. I'm the fourth Black person ever popularly elected to the United States Senate following Barack Obama. We have seen the African American community achieve things that have been extraordinary. But right now, the challenges are grave, the threats are real, but the possibility and the promise lies before us if we are willing to activate, to organize, to vote, and seize it.
Senator Cory Booker, always good to talk to you. Thanks for making some time this evening. We turn
Thank
our
you,
attention
and
now
Derek.
to Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is from the 30th District in Texas, a Democrat. Representative, thanks so very much for joining us. Let me ask you about enthusiasm. that has been a concern as we move to November, that we've not seen enough of it. In the last few days, we have certainly seen that ramp up. Talk to me about what you've seen and what your expectation is from this point.
Yeah, we've seen record enthusiasm. I hate that I'm not actually on the ground because that's where I love to be. I'm in DC, where I'll be heading to votes here in a second because we just keep voting for no reason. But nevertheless, that's a whole other issue. We've seen a record number of new people register to vote. I think that the number is about somewhere between 40 and 45,000 new voters, and close to 90% of those are under the age of 35. So we're seeing this surge of enthusiasm that we have to presume is because of what is happening. We also obviously had a historic fundraising day on that first 24 hours that Kamala Harris, our vice president, became the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. And so we are seeing it. We're hoping that this lasts because we've got 100 days to go. But I'm really encouraged and excited. And I personally think that we are going to have to build coalitions that have never been built before, which is something that we saw had to take place in 2008. And the final thing that I'll say is the word of the week has been hopeful. There are so many people that the word that comes out of their mouth is that they are hopeful. And for so long, we have been hopeless. And so I'm really excited to see what happens in the coming days.
Let me ask you one other thing before we let you get out of here. Work never stops there on the Hill, as you've got to run and take a vote. But you mentioned the idea of the enthusiasm that you see now. How do you sustain it through November? Because that's what's going to happen. You've got the convention coming up in August, but you've got to sustain it for 6 more months.
Yeah, so I think that we sustain it with education. I think, in fact, I'm sitting in a location that you can't really tell where I'm at. That's kind of for a reason. I just got out of a meeting where we talked about some polling. We talked about some research that's going on, and we talked about what it's going to take to move the needle even more. So, purely education. Like the more that people find out about who the vice president is, beyond being a prosecutor, fully understanding what type of prosecutor she was when she was prosecuting cases, knowing that she was the first prosecutor to make sure that there were body cams that were going to be required for law enforcement, making sure that she did, what we consider like a second chance program to make sure that low level drug offenders and just kind of low level nonviolent offenders had an opportunity to keep a clean record and to get their high school diploma and things like that. Like better understanding the heart of who she is and the heart of her work, and making sure that people understand that this wasn't one of those prosecutors that was just going out seeking convictions, but was living up to her creed, which is to seek justice, not convictions. So long as we continue to tell them about that, so long as she's continuing to be out front on the work that she's done as relates to guns and the work that she wants to do, the work that she's done as it relates to repro and the work that she wants to do, the work that she has done as it relates to voting rights and the work that she wants to do, and finally the work that she's done as it relates to the economy and what she wants to do, and letting people know that she understands that the economy isn't just a word where we're talking about how well someone's 401k is performing, but she's talking about making sure that those that are struggling with rent prices, working towards trying to make sure that there are some caps, making sure that those that are struggling to buy a home, making sure that there are stipends that are going to be available for them because we know that the interest rates are high. And then finally, making sure that she can reinvigorate some of the most successful things that this administration did, which was making sure that they were assisting with the child tax credit, which was giving $300 to each person per child per month.
Yeah.
And it brought 50% of African American children out of poverty. So she's going to continue to push forward with these things. And finally, we are going to make sure that any and everybody that will listen is being educated on Project 2025.
Well, certainly we would love to have an opportunity down the line to talk with you about that and many other issues. And as we know, politics is a game of not only quid pro quo, but you never know what's going to happen. We were all surprised, I think, on Sunday, at least the timing of the announcement. And as we saw with you just a couple of weeks ago, anything can ignite some enthusiasm. So we will certainly be talking with you down the line as we move to November. Good to see you. And we'll talk soon.
Good to see you too, Ed. Thank you so much to NAACP. Thank you so much for everything that you do, Derek. And we are in this fight with y'all. So have a great night.
All right. Thanks so much. Let us turn our attention to, and we're going to bring Derek back in with us from time to time as we wait for a couple of other representatives. And of course, we'll be hearing from you throughout the night. But let me bring in Bishop Leah Daughtry. She's a political strategist. And also Dr. Wes Bellamy, Public Policy Chairman of 100 Black Men of America. I thank you both. Leah, if I may, let me start with you. I think Representative Crockett hit the nail on the head. It is about sustaining energy for people to be engaged in the body politic and actually going to the polls in November. Where do you see that now? Oh, you might be muted there.
Okay. After
Okay,
3 years, you think I know how to work the mute button. Good to see you, Ed, and to be with all of my NAACP family as we talk about what's ahead. It's been outpouring of enthusiasm over these last 36 hours? It hasn't been that long, but you can feel the joy in the air from Win with Black Women hosting a call on Sunday night with 44,000 women joining in to learn how they can be involved, followed by Win with Black Men, followed by the Asian Pacific Islander women. I think they were calling tonight. There's a white women's call happening. There's a white dudes call, as they call it, a white dudes call. People are excited and ready to participate in this democracy. Vote.org says that the number of voter registrations that they have seen has gone up 700% as people are registering to vote. The youth enthusiasm is off the charts, and it's a great time, I think, in America as people are paying attention to what's happening, wanting to be engaged. And as Representative Crockett said, the word is hopeful. So we're hoping that sort of energy will continue over the next 100 days, regardless of whatever party you're voting for. Just to have people excited about being involved in the process is a win.
Yeah, and believing that they indeed can make a difference. Hold tight for me, Leah, if you will. Wes, I'll be to you in just a moment. We're joined right now by Representative Steven Horsford, Democrat out of Nevada's 4th District. Representative, always good to talk to you and good to see you. I want to talk to you about the idea that, quite frankly, if history holds true with states, we're down to about 6 or 7 that are going to swing and make a difference in terms of who sits in that office. Your state is, give me a sense of ground in terms of Can you hear me, Representative?
Hello.
Can you hear
me?
I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, let me try that question again. I was thanking you. I gave you a wonderful introduction. I'm sorry you missed it, but we'll have to get to this down the line. Good to see you. I was talking about the idea of people going to the polls and the notion of one person, one vote isn't really true anymore, quite frankly. But there are a number of states that are going to make a difference if history is true to those that lean left or right historically. Yours is one of those states that people kind of toss a coin. Give me a sense of what you're hearing on the ground and what you've seen by means of the difference between today and Sunday.
Well, Edward Gordon, it's great to be on. Great to be on with the NAACP. Obviously, we had the national convention in Las Vegas last week. I was honored to be there on behalf of my constituents in Nevada's 4th Congressional District, which includes a part of Las Vegas. But let me say this. I'm so honored to work alongside civil rights organizations, the oldest civil rights organization like the NAACP, to advance the issues of economic opportunity, justice, equity, and equality and justice for everybody. And on the ground in Nevada, since Sunday, look, it's on fire. We had 600 people sign up just yesterday to volunteer as grassroots organizers.
We've had people calling in to ask how they can contribute because they want to make sure that their voices are heard this upcoming November. So I am Congressman Steven Horsford. I'm proud to represent the 4th Congressional District. I'm the first African American to be elected to Congress from Nevada. I'm a native of Las Vegas. I'm a son of an immigrant mother who came to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago. I lost my father to gun violence when I was 19 years old, a freshman in college. And I know how important every election is, but how consequential this upcoming election is. And I first and foremost want to thank President Joe Biden. He was with the NAACP at their national convention in Las Vegas. He joined me at my economic summit on housing that I had in North Las Vegas in a portion of my district. And his speech tonight around democracy and restoring the soul of our nation and passing the baton to the next generation of leaders, including our Vice President Kamala Harris, says so much about who he is, the character of the person. And I'm extremely proud to have been a strong supporter of President Joe Biden and to be among the first leaders in Congress to support our Vice President Kamala Harris to be our nominee. But I also want to say, look, 34 years ago, I went to my first NAACP convention as a high school student and an AXO participant. And this organization has helped me from the point of a young man in high school to now to develop my leadership abilities. I would not be a member of Congress. I would not be the chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus if it were not for the opportunities that the NAACP has afforded me. So I first and foremost want to say thank you to President Derek Johnson, to the board of directors, to all of the members of this historic organization. And I understand the assignment in this moment, and the assignment is to make sure that we carry on the great mission of this organization in the halls of Congress and in state capitals all across the country. So I'm really honored to be a part of this conversation with all of you tonight.
Very quickly, let me ask you this. You've got a truncated time frame based on what has occurred. How comfortable are you realistically, not the rhetoric that the Democratic Party, I'm sure, is giving you guys talking points on, but realistically, you've got a high mountain to climb. How good or optimistic are you?
So I just left a meeting of all the members of the Congressional Black Caucus. We met with the Harris for President campaign, and we are 104 days out from the election. We have a lot of work to do, but I am confident that we are going to be successful because we have one objective, and that is to win, and that is to win for the American people. This is not about one particular party. This is not about one person running for a position. This is about centering the issues of the people and to make sure that the policy is at the forefront of the issues that we are advocating for at this time. Now, I believe that democracy is a team sport, which means that all of us can play a part in making sure that we advance and restore this democracy into what it needs to be for all of us. And that means making sure that every single person who's eligible to vote is registered, that understands the importance of this upcoming election, that they know when the election is, whether that's early voting, whether that's mail balloting. These are the issues that we're going to make sure that every single vote, especially in battleground states like mine, have this information, and all of us can play a part in that process.
All right, Representative Steven Horsford out of Nevada. I believe it's the 4th district, if memory serves me correctly. I thank you, sir. Greatly appreciate it.
Honored to be with you.
All right. Leah, let me turn our attention as we have to get him on back to you. We've heard from the elected officials here. Of course, they're going to put the best spin on it. Give me a sense as a strategist and someone who is connected to the idea of the mechanism of running for office and a national election. How daunting is this, and what should people look for, if they want to really involve themselves in helping that process along?
Sure. Well, this cycle, I am honored to serve as the chair of the Democratic Convention Rules Committee. So we are responsible for administering and enforcing the rules as it relates to how the convention will run and how the nomination process will run. Of course, we passed our rules 2 years ago, and no one foresaw the events of Sunday, which has caused us to ensure that the rules we passed are still applicable to the current situation. So here's what you want to note and look for over the coming days and weeks, in particular as we roll up to convention. We have in our system pledged delegates, those who are elected in their states, and we have automatic delegates, sometimes we call them super delegates, who are elected officials, governors, and DNC members. Our process now calls for, as the president was elected, President Biden, and these delegates were pledged to him, meaning that they were their vote was for him, except in all good conscience. And so he came to the convention with 3,900 of the 4,000 delegates needed to become of the 4,000 delegates available. Now that he's withdrawn, all of those delegates are unpledged and are free to vote for whomever they choose. So in our process, what we've done is you will note on your calendar, July 25th to the 27th is the period of time, those 3 days, for anyone who wants to run for president under the Democratic banner to raise their hand and say, me, I'm declaring my candidacy. It is open to any Democrat in the nation who thinks that they want to run. They have those 3 days, July 25th to July 27th, to declare their candidacy. After that, they have another 3 days to July 30th to amass 300 signatures of the delegates to support their candidacy. And so watch that date, July 30th, because that is when we will know as a party officially who is eligible to have their name on the ballot for the delegates to vote for come August. Voting opens August 1st. Delegates will be able to vote beginning August 1st up until August 5th for anyone whose name is on the ballot. And so those are the dates you want to watch for.
Yeah.
And at the end of August 5th or so, we'll know who the Democratic nominee for president will be.
And we should note that, though not official yet, the pledged delegates that they believe Vice President Harris has will allow her to be the official nominee, not the presumptive nominee, if those delegates don't move aside. Wes Bellamy, let me bring you here and ask you about the chaotic nature of what we are looking at. We're all working on a motion to a great degree right now, but policy is going to be important at the end of the day. What do these parties have to do by means of engaging voters who believe often that, particularly young voters, that they're disenchanted with the system no matter what the party is? What has to be done to show these voters who are skeptical that policy still matters? You're on mute, Wes. Hit that mute button. Okay, I think I can hear you now. Try it again.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
All right, we got you, buddy.
All right. So personally, as a Black man, my political ideologies align with Black folk and doing what's best for Black people. And from my personal estimation, I believe that there's nothing wrong with Black folks centering our needs and demanding of candidates, no matter what side of the aisle in which they come from, to do what's best for our communities. I think it's very clear that when you have two candidates who are currently running for the highest office of the land, their policies have to match what they're looking for when it comes to and pertains specifically to votes, i.e. the Black vote. So I would encourage Black folk to look at the two individuals who, again, are running for president and look at whether or not their policies align with what we're looking for when it comes to women's rights. As we've often said, if you have a mother, if you have a sister, if you have a niece, a cousin, whomever in your life that's a woman, their lives could be dramatically different based on how you vote and engage in this electoral process. Specifically, as a Black man and just Black people, again, when we look at the unfortunate incidents that occurred with our dear sister Sonia, who just lost her
Yeah.
life, another instance of police brutality. You have one side of the aisle vowing for qualified immunity or ensuring that individuals will not be held accountable regardless of what they do. And then you have another side in which we're vying for justice. Now, again, the 100 Black Men, as well as the NAACP, we are nonpartisan organizations. But I think, again, as Black folk, it's important for us to look at policies that have been presented and look at the ones that are most advantageous for us and vote your best interest.
Let me do this, and then I want to follow up on that if I can, Wes. For those of you who want to get your questions in and you're dialed in, hit *3. That'll take you to the folks who are screening, and we'll get that. It's interesting, Wes, that you put it that way, because I think too often, particularly in our community, there's this thought of you kind of have to take what's given to you, as opposed to understanding that there is a push that should come from the electorate to say, listen, I put you in, I did my job, now you owe me something.
Yes.
Should we not learn that game a little better than we've been playing it for decades?
Well, I would make the argument that there's a great deal of us who understand that game. There's a multitude of Black elected officials. I think I've seen some data that shows we have now more Black elected officials than which we've had at any time in the United States history. That's on the local, state, and federal level. Many of us are engaged, but we have an obligation to go back and reach down into our communities to the individuals who do not, quote unquote, play politics, as some would say, or some would say, I don't get involved in that kind of stuff because those people are going to do what they do anyway. We have an obligation to show them, if, again, as we all know, if you're not on the table, or you know that you're going to be on the menu, whether or not you want to be or not, if you're not engaged with the cooking process. So we have an obligation, again, all of us, to go back into our communities, whether that be the individuals who may wear their hair a little different than what we would like, or wear their pants a little lower than what we would like, or have every season being a hot girl summer. We got an obligation to go back and talk to all of our people, to educate all of our people and engage all of our people about why we have to play this game and, most importantly, win this game.
Yeah, Leah, let me ask you, it's really always all about the ground game and turnout. You think about, 3 of the states that are, going to be crucial in getting to that 270 number, that magic number for the Electoral College. I think about Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. You're not going to win Pennsylvania without a huge turnout in Philadelphia. I think about my hometown in Detroit, same there. You will not win Michigan by any means if Detroit doesn't turn out. I think about ATL in Georgia, which can teeter sometimes. Talk to us about the ground game and why it's so important for those urban areas in particular, as the media likes to call them, to turn out.
Yeah, and I'd also mention Milwaukee in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Key, the Black vote there is also key. So, I think you've already said it, Ed. We got to have the turnout in those areas. We are difference makers in each one of those, and our turnout can make the difference for any candidate, up ballot, down ballot, for any initiative. But I would caution us not to wait on elected officials to do that work. This is also incumbent upon organizations like the NAACP, like the Urban League, like National Act, like NCNW, like your local block association, to do the work on the ground. What we know is that the biggest influencers in any community is not Beyonce, it's not Kendrick, it's not Drake, it's the mayor of the block. That lady that sits on the corner that knows everything coming and going. It's the local minister. Those are the people who have the influence. We individually have the power to knock on doors, to talk to our neighbors, to say, hey, you voted? Are you registered? Are you sure? What's your voting plan? Have you been yet? Can I take you? These are things that we can do. And oftentimes we defer that power to someone else, to some other organization, or to some elected official. But the power resides in us. We can make the difference. And that's the message I say to voters also. Don't rely on anybody else. What's your voting plan? And who are you taking with you? Who have you talked to in order to maximize our turnout?
Wes, let me turn to you, man. I was at the barbershop today getting a clip, and one of the things that was interesting with the young brothers there is even with all of the excitement that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 days, many of them still felt disenchanted and didn't feel that any politician is speaking to them. What would you encourage those who may have a little bit more wisdom to talk to these young folks about, in terms of not trying to tell them what to do, but where they should go to find out how things speak to them? Too often we try to tell them what to do, and that really should not be the role, I think.
Well, I think it requires a great deal of patience from those of us, again, who know. And when we're looking to educate persons about why your vote is so valuable and understanding the policies and how they impact our communities, there has to be some patience that is brought forth, because when we look at the massive amount of misinformation that's specifically been targeted towards Black men, it's understandable why so many don't get, quote unquote, why this is important, or feeling as if there's one candidate who is absolutely horrible and another candidate who is absolutely horrible, and they're feeling like they have to pick between the lesser of two evils. And again, a lot of that is based off of misinformation. So I challenge our brothers, specifically with the 100 Black Men. We're on this 16 city tour, Real Men Vote tour. We're going into communities and talking to brothers about the importance of engaging in the electoral process. I challenge Black men specifically to have the patience, the same way in which some of us can sit and play the new NCAA 25 or the latest Madden game or NBA 2K. We can sit and build our seasons and my player and so forth. Or some of us can do a lot of different things and be patient when we're in the pursuit of what we want. I encourage us to be patient with our brothers in terms of educating them. But before we can go and educate others, we have to educate ourselves. And that's where the commitment to our people comes in. We have to be diligent enough to educate ourselves on these issues, and then go out and be even more so diligent with educating our brothers. And I was very proud to be on the call with over 50,000 Black men, raising nearly $1.3 million Win with Black Men the other night. But we also know that a lot of those guys who are on that call until 11 and 12 o'clock at night, those aren't the brothers who we need to be, or those aren't the brothers who are talking about not voting on the block or in the barbershop.
Right.
We got to get
right.
them just as engaged, and that's where we come in.
We also have to be smart about what we hear in the media. You keep hearing about these polls of Black men defecting and voting for Trump. And I was on CBS on Sunday as the announcement was made, and I told them, they kept asking me about that. And I said, well, I ain't met one brother that's going to do that. So I don't have, sheer belief in these polls. We've got to be, to your point, educated, not just take something for granted because it's said. Abba, let's turn our attention to some of the folks who are trying to get in on this. You either have a question or a call for us, and I will ask those who are going on the line to please keep your question brief. I'll have to cut you off if you don't, as we have a number of people lined up. So, Abba, who do we have?
So we have Deborah from Dearborn, Michigan. Deborah, you are on live. Go ahead with your question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, Deborah, we can hear you.
Okay, hi, this is Pastor Deborah Sellaway from New St. John AME Church in Dearborn, Michigan. Really quick. First of all, we at the AME Church have been supporting President Biden, and we will to the end. But two things. I know Project 2025 is a big deal, but we can walk and chew gum at the same time. And I have been working for over a year to try to get the NAACP, whoever can help me get the word out about what democracy is. I done heard it like 4 times tonight. You'd be surprised how many people don't know what democracy is and don't know what it means if they don't have it no more. And we need to get this word out. I'm trying to get something on a PDF or something to print out and get to my mother churches through email. So if anybody know how to do that, we need to get this down. Just explain it plain and simple, not technically, just in people's face to know what democracy is. And
all right, thank you. Let me have. Okay. Thank you so much for the call, Leah. Can you take that on, as she said, to put it in layman's terms? Sometimes we do get a bit cliche-ish, or we assume everyone understands the dynamic. Can you give us a sense of layman's understanding of what we're talking about? And then Derek, if you want to chime in, we'll pull you in as well.
I will say to the sister that she's singing my song because folk don't often know what terms like democracy and fascism mean. And so the way that I explain to sister is our nation is built on the idea that every person can vote and every person can participate in the processes that make this country go. And what is at stake now when we say democracy is at stake? We have one candidate who has said that on his first day, he's going to get rid of the Constitution, and he is challenging all of these systems that even allow us the right to vote or the expectation that we will be able to participate in selecting who represents us. All of the statements that he's made lead us to believe, either because he's inferred it or because he's directly said it, that that right will go away. And you will be stuck with whoever is in office or whoever he installs in office. And so that is the threat to democracy that a lot of us talk about, that our ability to participate in the government, to be represented in the government, will be destroyed, diminished, and tossed out the window in favor of an authoritarian regime that is making all of the decisions on our behalf in terms of what they think is the right thing to do.
And
But
Derek
I
Johnson,
agree that we can break this down further and help folks understand.
Derek Johnson, even though we've seen former President Trump try to distance himself from Project 2025, I think it's fair to say that it is to a great degree a roadmap for eroding democracy as we know it.
Well, it actually completely subverted. What I mean by subverted, the norms that we have grown accustomed to in terms of how we engage. For example, it would eradicate the concept of a 40-hour work week and create a 160-hour work month. Therefore, if you work over 8 hours, you'll no longer be eligible for overtime, so long as you're within 160 hours per month. If you are teaching history and it mentions contributions of the Black community and someone complains, that teacher can be prosecuted under a felony for teaching critical race theory. There are so many things we have grown accustomed to allow us as African Americans to improve our quality of life. It's not perfect, but it's far better than what it used to be. All of those things will be taken away. In fact, all of the things that many of us have read about, seen on Eyes on a Prize, we become the new rule of law. So it'll be an apartheid system based on a 1930 or 50s reality, as opposed to what we currently are appreciating, but in ways in which we cannot imagine, in terms of our ability to come and go as we please, participate in certain activities as we please. All those things would be on the table for an individual who will operate as a dictator, or the final say can determine how all of those things can be taken away just because we didn't exercise our right to vote in a very aggressive way to ensure we get representation that best meets our needs and our interests.
I don't want to say that I've read all 900 pages. It is a huge, huge document, but certainly I've perused it as best I can. And one of the things that I think that to break it down, and then Wes, I want to give you an opportunity to chime in here, but the idea of there were certain watchdog opportunities that were given to us legislatively and the like over these years that will be snatched away. And without anyone overseeing that and watching, you really do have the ability, for instance, DEI programs. I think most of us would suggest that they were not a cure-all, end-all, be-all, but they were to a great degree a watchdog in many instances. And we're already seeing, before Project 2025 has come in, particularly in higher education and in some corporate America corners, DE&I programs being smashed and snatched away, and African Americans in particular losing jobs and opportunities. Derek, give us a sense of, I'm sorry, Wes, give us a sense of, your suggestion, what the sister said, to kind of break it down for her.
Well, I think that even when you look at Project 2025, and Project 47, which has been the 45th president policy agenda, they're very much so aligned. There is deliberately an attack on the civil liberties of Black folk, people of color, and those who are working to advance, to make our country more inclusive. There's no other way to describe it. And what I think that we have to do as a community, and more so as a nation, is not only educate ourselves on these policies that are being brought forth, but we have to be diligent in terms of educating our people on why it is not solely on elected officials and others of that ilk to take care of our communities. We have an obligation to take care of our communities, as we've seen in states across the country, i.e. Florida, i.e. we've seen with several NAACP, organization chapters rather. We have a responsibility to host our own Saturday academies, or teaching it at Sunday school, or ensuring that the education of our Black history is still communicated to our young people. We have to still do that, regardless of who wins this election. But make no mistake about it, the individuals who are currently trying to, quote unquote, take back their country and make it great again, have no plans for our Black and brown bodies to advance in the way in which we are hoping and our ancestors hope for us to do so. Make no mistake about it. So that's why we can't play games with this election. We got to be diligent in educating and diligent at the polls.
I couldn't agree more, man. The idea that we sometimes wait too long rather than doing for ourselves. We're kind of looking for this savior. And I think the sister who called earlier, she hit the nail on the head. Sometimes we do a disservice by just saying Project 2025, assuming that people know what it is, or assuming that, you know, they have a bit more than the first peel of the onion. And maybe we should just break it down into terms that we all understand, and that might, wake up some of these folk who won't necessarily only hear it as Project 2025. Abby, you've got some comments from YouTube?
Yeah, love this question. So question from YouTube is, what can be done to ensure that key Senate and House seats and all down the ballot seats are receiving equal attention?
Yeah, Leah, that let's be honest, that was a huge concern when there was question about whether Joe Biden should continue. Many of those who came out very early on to say, they wanted to see him go, were really trying to save their own hides in very, very close races. How do we ensure the down ballot idea, or is that simply just historically, a top of the vote issue?
Well, traditionally, we've thought about the presidency and the top of the ticket as being incentive for people to vote, and then they would, click down I'm from New York, you click down the down the ballot all the way down, and I want to challenge that notion. Every race is important, whether the president is on the ballot or not. If you got to click bottom up. You can click top down, but every single one, because every office has its importance, has its place. Of course, we know the United States Senate does things like confirm Supreme Court justices. The House of Representatives passes tremendous legislation that often starts in the House, goes to the Senate. So each one is critically important. You can't leave any line blank. Start at the top, go down, start at the bottom, and go up. But it's important, and that includes mayor's races, state legislative races, secretaries of state that oversee our voting processes, school board elections where they're determining what the school curriculum are. Every single office matters, and we have to develop the habit of voting up and down the ballot for every office, because they each have their place in our lives and how they affect the way in which we and our communities function.
Wes, give me a sense, man. I was looking at some of the comments on my Instagram when I was promoting this, and one of the brothers said, if Dr. Bellamy is there, I'm there. So, you're speaking to a lot of people who truly believe that you're giving some wisdom and word that they don't always get from folks that we see every day, right? They want to go beyond the rhetoric, and we understand that politics is a lot of rhetoric as well on both sides of the aisle. What would you like to see from as you suggested, our community and our leaders in particular to kind of push past the rhetoric, to do some things that we've yet to see done?
There would be a couple of things. The first one I would say is I would encourage us all to truly think about how we value each other. And if I value you, then I can respect you. And if I respect you, then I won't do any harm towards you. And if I won't do any harm towards you, then we can build together. And that's also included in how I communicate with you. So I think in some instances, we find individuals who may have more political acumen. I was an elected official in Charlottesville, Virginia, serving as the vice mayor. So I could talk high up here about policy, but the people in which I communicate with on a day-to-day basis in my local community, they don't always understand the jargon. So I show my value to by speaking to you in a way in which you can understand this, by making sure you understand very clearly, hey, bruh, we see somebody trying to take away women's rights. You know, the young lady that you may have had a situation with, who both of y'all feel as if things need to be a little different. Y'all need to be able to have the decision and the opportunity to choose. There's someone who's looking to take that away. When we talk about people, yo, man, qualified immunity, you know, when the police come and they may do whatever they want to you and there's no one holding them accountable. But there's a party that's trying to give those individuals full availability to do whatever they want, and however it goes down and just how it goes down. We need to fight back against that. That's why your vote matters. So the way in which, again, we communicate with each other shows to me how we value each other. And those are some of the things in which I would look for us to change immediately. And I see that happening across the country. We just have to be steadfast in the way in which we do so.
And we have to start connecting the dots. You know, there's been so much of a movement after the shooting we saw of Sonia Massey, and the idea that connecting the dots in terms of who we put in office and determining how police forces are run and what can be done. And Donald Trump has already told you day one he's going to give police qualified immunity. That would have changed this situation entirely by means of the police officer who, engaged
Brother
in
Ed,
that fatal shooting.
Brother Ed, can I say something to that point?
Please.
I want to, and again, I want to make sure that everybody understands the NAACP, 100 Black Men, we are nonpartisan organizations. But I want us to understand the individuals who are currently running for office. While I was serving as vice mayor in Charlottesville, we had a very unfortunate attack, an incident in which a young lady actually lost her life. Heather Heyer, where a group of people ran into a car, drove into a group of protesters, quote unquote, about a Confederate statue that was being removed during my time in office.
And people will remember the incident by means of those torches being brought out and all of that. Yeah. That's made national news. Go ahead.
So I was serving as the vice mayor at the time, the only Black person on the council, the person that was kind of receiving a lot of the hate on the council side. The individual who's currently running for president right now, when he called to after someone again had been killed, he didn't say, Wes, or Dr. Bellamy, how's the community doing? Is everyone okay? His first words were, why are you calling me 45 on television? And I think it's important for us to think that's the character of the individual who's running. Like, we have a person who said that there are very fine people on both sides, in which you had a group of people who killed someone. Like, these are very serious times in which we're in, which is why we can't afford to play around with this election. We have to vote our interests and vote who has our best interests as a people who on the ballot. And that's up and down the ballot, because statewide and locally, those policies impact us arguably even more so than the president, but the president sets the tone. So we have to do what's right. It's imperative.
Yeah, we don't often connect the dots. Let me hurry up and get just a couple of calls before we, because we're up against it. Abba, who do we have?
We have Valerie from Texas, who has a question about getting mobilized, and then a couple of people also have a question about volunteering. So we can talk about both of those things. Valerie, you are on. Go ahead.
Valerie?
Oh, I think we lost Valerie. But if we could talk about how we can volunteer, that would be great.
Derek, you want to pick that up because this is going to be crucial in this election. The idea of doing some of those old school, volunteer boots on the ground movements.
For the NAACP, we've created a system where individuals can text the number 20707 and put in their volunteer, and we will provide you with infrequent voters in your community in our targeted areas that we simply need you to call, text, knock on the doors. They may even live in your house to turn them out to vote. What we've been able to do is identify who are the individuals who are infrequent voters. Many of the people on this line probably are frequent voters. But who are the people we need to get out to vote? And we've been able to do it in a way in which we isolate those individuals. And then if you sign up as a volunteer, we place you with someone in close proximity. What we have learned is neighbor talking to neighbor is the most effective way to turn out to vote. It's not celebrities, as Bishop Daughtry said earlier. It's not somebody coming in from outside of your neighborhood. It's not somebody who's coming in who's not a part of the community. It's neighbor talking to neighbor. And so our goal is to get you to join, to volunteer, to turn out to vote. That is how we can make a difference. That's how we're going to ensure that our future is much brighter than the past we've come out of. 20707, the word volunteer.
All right, so let me do this, and I want to tell folks who are looking. These kinds of town halls, people can sometimes get frustrated because they feel like, well, you didn't get to this, you didn't get to that. But I think Dr. Bellamy, hit the nail on the head. We all have a part to play in this. You can't just sit back and wait for others. This is simply an opportunity to maybe ignite some thought around some things. And get you motivated to really install what you believe you can do to make a change. Let me get some closing thoughts before we leave. Bishop Daughtry, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, thank you for this opportunity to spend time with our family here at NAACP. And what I would just encourage people, remember, take a look, as Dr. Bellamy said, at the issues that you care about. What's important to you and your family and your community, and choose the candidates that best represent your values. No one is going to represent everything. There are no perfect candidates. Jesus is not on the ballot, but Jesus' values are. So what are the things that you're looking for? Who best aligns? And make the decision that best represents you, your family, your children. Who's going to move you into the life that you want to have? Who's going to help you achieve your version of the American dream?
Thank you, Leah, for that. Dr. Bellamy?
I don't really someone saying Jesus isn't on the ballot, but he's in the midst. That was, man, Bishop, you never amaze me. I would solely encourage our brothers and sisters to again remain diligent and steadfast. The work is in our communities, not just on the Zoom calls. The work is with those people who you may not want to talk to, not just on our Zoom calls. The work is sometimes even in the comments, ensuring that you provide people with facts and not just allowing them to spew whatever hate they want, and then fighting back against misinformation. So again, we got a little more than 100 days to be able to change the outcome of our country. And I trust that we're going to win with Black folk, because Black folk are going to do what we always do, and that's stand up, speak up, and show up. So the work is on us. Let's get to it. Thank you all for the opportunity, and I really appreciate you.
Indeed. Good to talk to you both. And we want to thank Representatives Horsford and Crockett for joining us, as well as Senator Booker. And in the theme of the evening, Derek, I will pass the torch to you to, in fact, close us out.
4 years ago, a group of Black women began to organize, and every Sunday night, they organized to ensure that there was a Black woman representation as vice president. They were successful because they had voice, they had agency, they had the right to actually make those demands because they understood the power of their vote. Bishop Daughtry was one of those individuals, Joe Edie, and several others. And as a result, Kamala Harris was selected as vice president. 4 years ago, there was a debate, and members of the Congressional Black Caucus, led by Congressman Clyburn said, we've never had a black woman on the Supreme Court. And they went to President Biden and says, if you want to win this presidency, you need to guarantee that there will be a black woman appointed to the Supreme Court. In South Carolina, President Biden at the time made that promise, and he followed through. And as a result, we had the first African American woman appointed to the Supreme Court. The power is in our hand, because 4 years ago, we began to hear the cries, the concerns about the mounting student loan debt and how it was a trap for teachers who have been in a classroom for 10, 15, 20 years. They could not qualify for a home or quality housing stock. And as we pushed and pulled the administration to consider, we were able to get them to revise the program of public service loan forgiveness. Why? Because majority of African Americans are employed by government, federal, state, local, or nonprofits. And because of that, over $1.8 billion of student loan debt has been canceled, and almost half of that amount has been in the African American community, opening up opportunities for us to buy homes and closing the wealth gap. Why? Because the black folk matter. 4 years ago, people began to continue to ring the bell around the high cost of insulin. And as a result of that, and the power of the black vote, no one did this for us. We did it through our vote. The cost of insulin has come down to $15. 4 years ago, the black vote mattered. 2 years ago, the black vote in Shelby County, Tennessee said, you know what, we're tired of a district attorney who are causing harm to our communities, throwing our children away. And as a result, through an aggressive program, we changed the district attorney. So when those officers in Memphis caused harm, they were suspended and terminated within 2 weeks. Why? Because of the black vote. Today, we sit here to say the black vote will matter. And it won't be through rhetoric, it'll be strategic, focused work. That work is for you on this call to stand up in your power, your agency, and participate to ensure we turn out the black vote. And that's what matters. And nothing else would happen unless we take control of our destiny. So text the number 20707, the word volunteer, so we can control the future. Because if we don't, someone else will. And if they will do bad in the past, you can only imagine what the bad they would do if they get back in power. 20707, volunteer. Thank you, Ed. Thank you to all the panelists. We can make a difference because we've done it in the past, and I know we can do it come November.
Thank you for joining, everybody. Again, if you want to volunteer to help us do this crucial work, visit naacp.org/volunteer. And you can also chip in financially to support the work. Any amount will help. naacp.org/donate. Thank you again, and have a great, great night.